Hi all, welcome to Off the Post. We have got it back up and running for the first time in a little while, and I thought much needed, and also gives the second channel a bit of love because obviously we were uploading like So Rare and other bits and bobs on there, but obviously So Rare for now is on the main channel. And thought, right, let's get it sorted that we are able to just give us what we kind of have here, which is like kind of talking football and everything else that we kind of enjoy, as it were. So basically, as always, we like to just be nice and chilled, nice and relaxed, have a bit of fun, talk all things football, and just kind of see what happened really for the season ahead. I thought get back into the rhythm of doing it. Got off the post. I was enjoying doing it. It was just always trying to sit down for like 20 minutes, half an hour, kind of talk all things football. And the biggest thing for the week, and not even just the week, but it's been for a while, is the whole qualifying structure in the Champions League, the Europa League, and the Conference League. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, it's not just because of Hibs, Rangers, Dundee United and Aberdeen. It's, I feel like 4 qualifying rounds, when you break it all down, is certainly a lot. Because obviously you've got your first qualifying round, second, third and playoff round. And if you get through the playoff round, you're into obviously Champions League, Europa League or the Conference League. It just feels like there's maybe like at times it feels like you've got to just do so much just to qualify, and there's like what has been very, very apparent so far is when you look at namely the Europa League qualifying especially, there's like a lot of teams that you would commonly see either maybe try to get in the Champions League or be in the Europa League, but this season especially they're all fighting it out in the Europa League. Like, and I'm talking like your Midtjylland, you see like your Warsaw, Cluj, you've got Shakhtar, which is quite rare this year because you so commonly see them in the Champions League. Steaua Bucharest have interest usually, but this season it's so different. Like Midtjylland finished second, they ended up in the Europa League. They played Hibs. We were unlucky against them over 210 minutes. 3 worldies across the 2 legs is what made the difference, but they won last night against They won on Thursday night against Fredrikstad, 3-1, and obviously from there, in Hibs' case, it could have been seen as a missed opportunity. But as I feel, if I'm honest, is the loser of that tie. If we'd got through to play Fredrikstad, it would have been Crystal Palace. Technically, who would have got if we'd lost that tie. So it would have been like a bit worrying. But hey ho, it's who knows. I think we would have beat Fredrikstad, we would have been in the playoff round for the Europa League, and we would have been guaranteed, as it were. But can't get everything you want. However, from there, going back to like big ties within Europa League, we had Cluj and Braga, PAOK Wolfsberger felt a half decent tie, Panathinaikos Shakhtar, and Servette versus Utrecht being another half decent tie. Conference League's already had some interesting ties as well, to be honest. Like in this round you've got like Anderlecht and Sheriff being one of them, Silkeborg Jagiellonia, Viking Istanbul Besiktas was another one that stood out. But like still a number of big teams early in this route in the competition, like your Alkmaars and Hajduk Split, Besiktas, I said Alkmaar and Anderlecht. Besiktas obviously a big team as well. Like Rosenborg. What was quite interesting, like there's still some small teams in, like when you think about it, like Noah's one of the small teams in the Europa League. Drita for Kosovo. Your Conference League has Milsami, Virtus, Arda, Kauno Zalgiris, Riga, Gior, Duffeldange, Levada, Linfield, Vikingur, Larne still in, Balakani, Shamrock. It makes for like interesting viewing because you know that there's going to be some small teams are going to sneak through, but quite a lot of the small teams have been sadly drawn to big teams. Like the Milsami Virtus, we've been that was two small teams, Moldova and San Marino respectively, and Milsami been down to 9 men in the first leg. They've got a real chance, Virtus, of maybe sneaking the tie in the second leg to get through to the playoff round, which would be, I think, the first time in history. I want to say that a team from the like that kind of like region have made the playoff round, because in like all my knowledge I can't say I've ever heard of it like happening, but obviously I could be completely utterly wrong because just try to remember everything when it comes to teams, but at the same time it's trying to remember how it obviously all plays out for everyone, because you can't remember everything in the grand scheme of things. It's like you try your hardest, but it just keeps you going really. And sometimes that's what you find, because when there's like Champions Path still involved for a lot of these competitions as well, it's what keeps them, like the little teams, somehow still in it, because they know, oh, that's my way in, as it were, and you're like, really? Because it's like if, say, some of the smaller teams were to get, like, for example, Hamrun Spartans, for example, they could get into the like the Conference League because they're in the third qualifying round. The Europa League, they were unlucky the other night in their game, but they fell a little bit short. Like the upset the whole night was Rijeka getting beat to Shelbourne over the 3 nights. Hamrun was 2-1. They got beat, but they could have, if they tailed out to a 1-1, they might have had half a chance, because I think they would have fancied their chances a little bit better. But nonetheless, as I said, like four rounds in total just to get through is quite arduous for some teams. Like, and it goes back to the whole argument with the coefficient, and like at the same time as well, when you kind of look at how like the Conference League is obviously proper as 24 plus like 12, which sounds when you say it like that, it sounds quite crap, which is quite brutal in a sense and underwhelming, because you think there's only 6 match days, yet you're going to have 36 teams in it, and like for Hibs, we were only in the second qualifying round for the Europa League through the league, but the cup got a better spot, which made no sense whatsoever, because like the cup shouldn't get that kind of like level of prestige. It should go to the league position instead. But what I would say as well, when you kind of break everything down, is like for like the Europa League and the Conference League, is like, would it really be a bad thing to put like 32, like make it 32 teams go through to the last 32, basically the knockouts, but you put it as like maybe say 48 teams or something, bump it up somewhere, or 40 teams, really go give like teams a chance, and you would maybe say maybe play 8 games instead of 6, and you would just probably look to balance it out, I suppose, where it's teams have got a chance to, in essence, be like, oh, we've got here, we'll see what we can do, let's hope for the best and make it happen. Because obviously when you kind of look at the structure normally that they do for like match days, is it's like 2 in October, 2 in November, 2 in December. Would it really be a bad thing to put like 1 in September? Like, you could probably put games into January if you want to go to 8 games. Make it 8, and you could put maybe 1 before Christmas and 1 after Christmas, I don't know, so like another 1 in say September, but it's all just trial and error and just trying to balance out like what kind of works really in football for everyone, where they're happy like technically not playing not just the amount of games that teams play nowadays, but it's maybe a way that it allows more teams a chance to actually qualify. Like as I said, like your say Virtus or any of the smaller teams that have maybe got a chance. But the argument then becomes, you might get the bigger teams still getting brought in, as it were, because of X, Y and Z reason, and you're like, do we really need to have it that way? Can we not just have like make sure everyone that's getting drawn in these competitions that they have a chance to actually be in it to qualify, and not just kind of say, right, how do we kind of make teams have half a chance of not just qualifying for the like the competition, because it's nice to see unknown teams that we maybe don't necessarily know on paper, but getting a chance to compete in these competitions, it's gives them a chance really to say, oh, we're looking to give it a good go through, like the journey might be through the first like through the first qualifying round and have managed to get all the way through into the actual competition itself. It's not the first time it's happened. It probably wouldn't be the last either, but that's where teams have got to get a chance to show what they're worth. But it's an argument that's got to be made. Obviously, with this as well, like Crystal Palace, obviously they were in their spot was originally the Europa League and ended up in the Conference League. But yeah, I'm not here to kind of like query like why that happened, like why they did that. Because obviously Drogheda had the same problem. They were kicked out, and you say to yourself, like, surely there's got to be like a better system in place to not allow this to happen, because it's just going to cause hassle. Teams are just going to get disgruntled, and just looking at a big can of worms legally, potentially. Actually, that's the way I sometimes look at it, and I feel like that's where everyone's got to kind of be like watertight with everything, because you just can't really like expect that to happen, shall we say, like nowadays, because obviously teams are trying to work hard to get into Europe, and if they do get into Europe and they suddenly can't, I think the problem is if a team is, see, legitimately qualified, but if we've noticed with quite a few teams, when I was doing a bit of the reading on it, there's quite a lot of teams like Drogheda, like here's like quite a few teams DAC, Dunjaska Streda in Slovakia, OFK Beograd, obviously none of the Russian teams, Drogheda, Petrovac in Montenegro, Valmiera in Latvia, Magpies, they became just Magpies for that. Obviously Crystal Palace have still got their situation, but there was an argument made, I remember reading, because of what's gone on with not just Crystal Palace but all the other teams that have been affected through the competitions, was you don't even give like a spot to another team in the league. The argument that was getting made is, you say, right, well, you go through the Champions League or the Europa League or the Conference League, and you say, right, if we've got, say, like 15 or 20 teams affected, that's kind of not necessarily embarrassing, but it's a bit like, why is this happening? Why is so many teams being affected, especially in the Europa Conference League case? That was what didn't really add up. That you've basically got like, especially when they were making the point for the like I like how they were like, to the Champions, like when I was reading the notes, to the Champions League first qualifying round losers got a bye at the third qualifying round for the Conference League, which is quite a drop down. Not even getting like Europa League, it's like straight to the Conference League or something, but it's like the third round. But then, as I said, when you think Gibraltar, Latvia, Montenegro, Ireland, Serbia and Slovakia, that's half a dozen teams automatically affected. And as I said, because of the thing they were saying with the Champions League stuff, if that's like technically 8 teams, like the access, because there was the access, because there was a thing to do with Servette, Hibs, was it Bran, I think, and somebody else. I think it was, they were the 4. There was 4 teams. I think they said that they were all affected because of whatever has been going on, and I think this is why like Hibs now get like the lucky loser. They basically were entitled to like the lucky loser pool or something, and it was just, this was like so much like hassle, and people were like, nah, this is just not say tedious, but it was just like, this shouldn't be happening and all this kind of stuff. But I think because of everything that's just happened, it's just made like things a bit more confusing in terms of everything that's just going on. And I think people just forget that, like, end of the day, that teams basically have to, like, not necessarily work harder, but if there's things in place where if Hibs or Servette or Bran or whoever it was, like any of these teams that are potentially like that, they could have benefited, they should have been the beneficiaries of a situation. So say for example, because of Hibs losing to say, it was, I think it was because it, like Aberdeen were in the cup, for example. It was like, I think they were trying to say that I think the league spot, like Hibs should have been in like the 3rd Europa League round instead of the 2nd, for example. I think that was one of that. And Servette, I think, should have been like, everyone should have been like, I think, a round further up. I think it was just mainly to do like the coefficients is what it was mainly down to. But it was just not convoluted, but it was just like so confusing to try and like understand. And you see yourself like, why are people trying to make this confusing? Oh, it was, I found part of what I was looking at for the notes. Basically, it was, there's 25. It was 25 and 11, so it was like 25 teams get automatically into the, and then like 11 through like qualifying ways, as it were. And it was just very confusing, like why that should have happened, really. But basically, as I said, it was like Hibs. It was Hibs should have been in for qualifying round for, I think, Europa via their league position if Aberdeen were the cup. I think Servette should have been in the 3rd qualifying round for the Champions League, not like the 2nd. I think it was Branward, whatever, and it was just, it was quite interesting. It was like, I remember it was 4 teams because it was explained by, I think it was one of the Swiss football pages, and then I think whoever else, because it was like there was 4. They explained the 4 teams in question that were affected by it all. But basically, all that's really needed for the Europa League and the Conference League is just put more teams in. That's all you have to do. That's what I would do. Give them more of a chance, because what are you losing? Especially if they're saying it's like this is the 2nd season for these competitions to be under like a league phase instead, like, and like they play 8 match days in the Europa League but only 6 in Conference League. So what's the problem? But, and to emphasise that, do 1 in September, 2 in October, 2 in November, 1 in December, and 2 in January. Is it really that hard to do 2 in December, 1 in January? But yeah, a lot of waffling on about European football, and hopefully sort out a better system. Coefficient, obviously from a Scottish perspective, is looking rather good following last night's stuff, and hopefully it can continue. In terms of the ties, Hibs, Dundee United and Rangers all in strong positions to qualify next week. Rangers 3-0 up, Hibs 2-0 up, Dundee United 2-2. Obviously Dundee United have got a hard opposition being Rapid Vienna, but home advantage could play into their favour, because they might just get that result, get into the playoff round, and suddenly could be looking at a very real chance of seeing themselves get into the group stage, which would take some doing for Dundee United, because it wasn't they weren't expected to get through against Rapid Vienna, but knowing that they have, if they were to get through, they'd be laughing, and if they can get a real chance, for me personally, I would fancy them against AIK or Győr, and I fancy us against Legia Warsaw, personally, simply because Legia looked awful, sadly, against Larnaca, and I would say that we can really give ourselves a real chance of basically progressing into the groups and give ourselves a right financial boost, because it would really, the amount of money that you get nowadays is kind of startling. If for me, Győr, I would say Dundee United would prefer over AIK, simply because AIK have had the season well into effect, and they've not got many games left in the season, and I would say they have a better pedigree than Győr, personally, just from what I know of AIK, because there are a lot of players in there that have not just English British experience, Guidetti, they have Bersant Selina, they have Filip Benkovic and Christopher Nordfeldt. So they've got a number of known players that have played in England or Scotland respectively, that basically will be competitive against Dundee United, whereas Győr aren't maybe as known to people, but they've earned their spot, and it's more a squad that unless you really follow Hungarian football, you're not really going to know the squad, and even then I kind of lack a little bit, but that's just for me, there's a couple of the players when I went through the squad, when I was comparing it to Dundee United, if they were to get through, what would it be? And it's with Legia, I was doing the exact same. I thought Larnaca's a very competitive squad, but I was because Larnaca's obviously put a lot of time and effort to build not necessarily a serious squad, but a squad that's good for the league, but also good for them, Per Pons, Jimmy Suarez, Engel Garcia, very Spanish vibe, Miramon, but it's also quite an ageing squad that what I found interesting, there's trickles of youth, but there's a lot of veterans Marcus Rodin, and I thought, right, they've got mixes of experience, but they have players that have been about, and then as I said with Legia, a lot of familiar names in their squad, but it's also mix of youth and a lot of age, then a mix of like aging, like veterans like Jared Dezek, Claude Goncalves, Paul Wozlek, and Sam. But I was like, it's still not a team that overly, when I was looking through it, it's like, and then like Ruben Vinagre, for example, or Kaputska, I was like, I wasn't exactly too awed by it, because I thought if we were going to try and win the tie, we're going to have to beat them anyway. So that was the way I looked at it. I thought, we've got to beat who's in front of us if we want to qualify for the Conference League. And what's handy is, if we get through this tie, we don't like play league games. So it's like, if you're in so like all the league, I think it's like whatever league games we have come those 2 following Sundays we aren't playing. I think one's a cup game anyway, so it's like, I think they've said, oh, we'll reschedule that cup game or something. And I was like, are you sure you're going to really do that? And you say to yourself, like, I think it was like Falkirk and St Mirren ties were basically rescheduled if we get through the tie. And I was like, because I think it was like we've still got to play our League Cup game against Livy after the Partizan game next week. But as I said, it was like Falkirk and St Mirren games, they were basically like rescheduled. They're not happening. If Dundee United, Rangers, Hibs, Celtic, Aberdeen, they're all basically half the league's not playing those 2 weeks, and you say to yourself, that's not bad. You can put your feet up. It can be seen as a bit of a farce, but for once, the league is finally saying, oh, we can give them not just a breather, but we're actually trying to give the teams a chance to qualify for Europe, because it's quite a quick turnaround if you're going Kelly, Partizan, Livy, Legia, Falkirk, Legia, St Mirren. You're basically playing like 8 games, 7-8 games. Obviously you've thrown the 2 Michelin and Dundee games, so you're basically at like 10 games. 10, like you could be nearly like, you'll have 6 European games and like a cup game and 4 leagues, so you're at 11. Yeah, it's just like, seriously, it's got to be kind of thought out a little bit better in that sense, to kind of benefit teams so that they're not burning out too quickly. And there's always space like later in the season to fit in games, especially if teams get knocked out in the cups early, for example. So if you've got like, not necessarily Hibs, but if it's like whoever they were maybe to play on a Saturday, you can say, right, can we fit this in on a Wednesday night? It's not like, I didn't mind that. It's like, put us in a Wednesday night, and then if we're qualified, then there's going to be fixture rescheduling anyway. You'd have to fit in for a Sunday. So yeah, it's like, we're all quick to forget these little things, as it were, shall we say. And I think that's what everyone kind of half forgets with everything in the grand scheme of things. And I think it's just a wait and see game, and we'll take it from there. But for me just now, like Europe, Scottish football, leagues in general, kind of, I think everywhere needs that little bit more, kind of, where it be more respect, or like kind of like care put into the teams to make sure that they're all kind of actually looked after and looked out for, because it can get quite unsettling for teams when you think about it's only been like a month since the end of the Club World Cup, and it's just saying to yourself, right, well, we've had that, like, what do we do now? And it's just see what happens, and I think end of the day it's just a wait and see game about what kind of happened really for football in Scotland and Europe, and like, do we, I wouldn't say that there's an excuse for like a fourth cup, or we go back to the days of going back to like the cup, like a Cup Winners' Cup kind of thing. So you put the Cup winners in those kind of like their own competition, which then you wouldn't need to have any qualifying rounds. You would have, right, you say, right, we've got 55 associations playing, and you say, right, let's see how we make it happen. Obviously, just now it's like 54 that are competing because Russia's the only one that misses out. But you'd say, right, we've got 54 teams, right, what do we do that makes it feasible? And that's when you've got an argument to then say, do you go groups, or like, so it's like if you've got 55 teams basically qualified, as it were, for it, you've got an argument to say, right, we could put in like 11 groups of 5, where the winner of each group, so you've got 11 group winners, then you go, say, all the seconds, so that you're at 22, and then you then probably then want to try and either go, or do you then just go group winners only, and the 5 best seconds or something, which could, so you end up going from 55 to 16, which could be seen as a bit of a disappointment, I suppose, but or you somehow try and, like, or do, as I said, do you do top 2 in the groups, they get the through, and you get to 24, and the 24s to get to 16 and whatever, I don't know, to kind of do it like Champions League. It's, I feel like there is like something that could be done. I feel like an old Cup Winners' Cup again would be handy. It would just kind of give, I feel like, for like, say your teams in the if they win the cup, so say in Scotland for example, if it's Celtic or Rangers win the cup and they're already guaranteed, does it then go to the finalist, or do you then not give a spot? If so, it becomes tricky because a lot of the same countries here, out the big ones especially, are going to be winning, and you say to yourself, right, well, you're already in, you're already in, you're already in, and it becomes not tricky, it's just how do you make it work. So there's a lot of other ways as well that's got to be accounted for with it in the grand scheme of things, and definitely something to possibly I don't know, account for, but nonetheless it's something for another day. As I said, I'm just one person, I'm just kind of thinking as I go, and all that good stuff. But let me know, folks, your thoughts on everything with football and where you kind of see it go in due course. But as I said, it's been a bit of fun just chatting away, talking all things football in Europe just now. As I said, we'll probably look to spend some time talking about other things within football. Like once the domestic seasons across Europe get kind of back into full flow. So have a good one, folks. Take it easy. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you all later.